Hey guys, Dan here, and I just wanted to let you know that today's episode is a couple of live mock draft simulations that Erik and I do. Erik Briggs, longtime friend of the show, and it's better to be seen visually. So it might not make the greatest audio podcast material of all time because we're working through these simulations in live time, debating prospects, going through the decision-making process with each pick about whether to accept trades or not, and which players to pick. So if you want to watch the video version, go to the YouTube channel, Emerald City Sportscast on YouTube. You can hit subscribe because we're going to do these live streams every week now. It'll be a big focus of the podcast moving forward. Not every show will be like this one. They usually do translate into audio only. This one, though, may be better on video. So go to the YouTube channel, check it out, or you can listen to it here if you want to work through the thought process with us. Thanks for listening. Here's the show.
Welcome to the Emerald City Sportscast.
Wilson, as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf for the touchdown.
Hosted by longtime Northwest sports journalist Dan Viennes.
Here's the drive deep to left. He has done it again. Wow. Kyle Lewis, 3 games, 3 home runs. Mariners have a 5-2 lead.
Brought to you by Hollywood and Vines Recording Studio. World-class audio recording right in the heart of the Woodinville Winery District.
Wide receivers to either side. Russell takes the snap, drops back. He's going to throw down the middle. He's got a man. The ball's caught.
Game over, baby.
Touchdown. The game is over. The Seahawks are going back to the Super Bowl.
And now, broadcasting live from the Dan Cave Studios, here's your host, Dan Viennes.
Welcome, everybody, to the Emerald City Sportscast on this April 14th, 2021. I am Dan Viennes, your fully vaccinated host. Today, we're going to have some fun today. We're going to get into that in a minute. But first of all, happy Jared Kelenic and Logan Gilbert Controllability Day. That's right. After today, or as of today, I guess, the Mariners can call up Jared Kelenic and or Logan Gilbert and still get that extra year of controllability. So it really didn't take that long. Does that mean Jared Kelenic's going to be called up for the weekend homestand? Probably not. Jerry DiPoto said recently there's some things they want him to work on as far as facing left-handed pitchers that he just hasn't gotten a lot of exposure to in the lower minors. They're working on that right now. Kelenic's been assigned to the team's Arkansas AA team because they are playing right now. Tacoma Rainiers aren't playing, but Everett, Arkansas, their 3 lower-level teams are playing games in Arizona. And so Kelenic is getting those at-bats. They are stretching Logan Gilbert out. So it's not going to happen this weekend, but we can see Jared Kelenic now at any time. As soon as the team deems that he's ready, and I don't think it's going to take that long, he can come up now. Team doesn't have to worry about that extra year of controllability or anything. So just thought we would mark that occasion today. Headlines are limited today, but they do include breaking news. Let's get to that now. If I can just work my mixer. Here, let's do this.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
And now, here's today's headlines, brought to you by FreeBets, the newest online sports betting comparison site. Check them out at freebets.us. The Seahawks have come to terms with veteran defensive end Aldon Smith on a 1-year deal. That news just coming down in the last hour. They have added now to what is already the makings of a dynamic group of pass rushers. Some quick history on Smith. He was the 7th pick in the 2011 draft and then began his career by terrorizing opposing QBs, racking up 33.5 sacks his first 2 seasons alone. But then issues with substance abuse and domestic violence, among other things, derailed his career, and he was suspended and out of the league from 2016 to 2019. He resurfaced with the Cowboys last year, registered 5 sacks, 3 of those against the Seahawks, you'll recall, 14 quarterback hits, and 50 quarterback pressures. However, he failed to record a sack in the season's second half. So at the age of 31, it remains to be seen if Smith has anything left in the tank and if he's truly left his demons in the rearview mirror. But the Seahawks have been interested in him for a while, dating back to the trade deadline last year. We know that. And now we know they have finally added him to the fold. Let's get into that. Let's talk some football. And let's bring in our friend, Erik Briggs. For the first time ever, we're making a little bit of history today. Video. Live from Phoenix, Arizona, Erik Briggs joins the show. Erik, how is it down there in the desert?
Oh, it's beautiful down here. Beautiful.
It's almost as beautiful up here right now. Actually, we might hit 80 this week, which I know is like your overnight low down there.
At this point, yeah.
But let's put it this way: it's like 71, and people are already complaining about the heat up here. So that's.
Well, that could be a rough summer for you guys.
That's the Pacific. Also, a historic day, perhaps, because it's the last time we're going to be able to see this. So, funny story, at where I work does not allow facial hair. It's like a traditional thing, right? El Gaucho's a very old school, traditional, and the owner likes to stick to those ideals. He does allow mustaches because he had one, the original founder.
Okay.
But I've tried that. It's not a good look. It's very porno. Like, it's just not, It's not a good look at all. But with masks, we have all kind of let the little goatee sneak in, including managers. So it's not like, well, we finally got the memo today that, hey, even with the mask, we need to make sure that we're, So I got about 6 more hours with this. So I wanted to at least have some video evidence of it for maybe the last time until I retire, perhaps. We'll see. Maybe one of these days they'll realize it's 2021 and they'll relax that a little bit. But anyway. So we're going to have some fun today with mock drafts. First of all, let me get your reaction. Let's talk about Aldon Smith. The Seahawks just keep adding pass rushers. What do you think of the move?
I mean, I really like it. I mean, I think that they're probably bringing him in as a situational pass rusher. And that's probably where he's at in his career. Like you said before, he's now 31. Obviously, he's had the off-the-field issues. I have read a few articles over those years that sounds like he has addressed them in certain ways.
Yeah.
He obviously got through all of last season with Dallas without any incidents off the field. So I really like it. It takes pressure off Alton Robinson, Darrell Taylor. I'm not sure if you saw that story that they're possibly thinking about moving Darrell Taylor to the Sam linebacker now.
Yeah.
So, it just gives us a lot more depth on that defensive line. And since you're not asking him to be an every down D end, you've got Hyder and Collier that can still play opposite Dunlap in the early down situation. I like it. He's an athletic freak. I think that if he drops a few pounds, it sounds like Dallas beats him up a little bit, and it maybe sacrifices a little bit of his athleticism because they were looking for him to play a lot more snaps than we would. But, yeah, you turn him into another rotational, situational pass rusher with Mayoa, Dunlap, Robinson, Taylor if he sticks there, Hyder Collier depending on how they mix them interior or on the outside of the line. I like it. It's good depth, and it really now leaves the Seahawks in the position where we don't have a lot of draft needs, which is good when you only have 3 picks. So I really like this. I hope it pans out. If he can be a 6.5 to 8.5 sack guy for us, I mean, you need those types of guys on the field. You don't have 4 guys that are all racking up 12.5, 15 sacks. But if you've got 4 or 5 guys that all rack up 6.5, 8 to 8.5 sacks, I mean, that's a formidable pass rush that people are going to have to really game plan for.
Yeah, it really takes us back to 2013 and 14, right? I mean, it's Pete Carroll's on record back then as saying you can never have too many pass rushers, and what made people forget Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill were backups on that Super Bowl winning team, and they had Chris Clemens and they just had so many guys that they felt like they were all more effective if they limited their snaps and didn't make them play every down. What there's so much to unpack here. We could almost have a separate episode on each of these issues. We could talk for an entire hour about what took Pete Carroll 8 years to learn that we need to go back to that again after years and years of us just banging our heads against the wall going, where's the pass rush coming from? Yeah. I went back and looked, and it's interesting. So last year at this time, I thought that we hadn't quite added Mayowa and Irvin, but we had. It was around April 1st that they signed Mayowa, 2 weeks after they signed Irvin. So but that was it. They pretty much stopped there until the draft. So going into the draft last year, I actually took this. This is from an NBC Sports story, announcing the Mayowa signing. This is a quote. Mayowa joins an edge rush rotation currently led by Irvin, followed by Shaquem Griffin and Rasheem Green. That was the pass rush a year ago today. Yes. Then they added Taylor and Robinson in the draft. Taylor coming off a broken leg, Robinson being a fifth-round guy. You look at now with, inside, as you mentioned, Poona Ford, Brian Monet, Al Woods. I think now, just because of pure numbers, I think we could see L.J. Collier full-time now being moved inside. And then on the edge, you have Dunlap, Hyder, Robinson, Taylor, Mayowa, Smith, Green. The numbers don't work. Not all these guys are going to make the team. Even if you were to move Taylor to that rush Sam, which some people think he can really play well, the Bruce Irvin role is what you're talking about. So many questions. So what does this mean for Darrell Taylor? What Alden Smith's going to show up? You mentioned that he bulked up. He worked out with Jay Glazer. They got him up to about 280. Part of that was because the Cowboys wanted to use him inside-outside.
Yeah.
Story broke yesterday from a guy who covers the NFC East that the Seahawks actually not only met with Smith as long ago as early March, but offered him a contract at that time. And then there were, quote, personal issues that kept a deal from being consummated. Some people read that as maybe he had a relapse. Here's what I think. I think they met with him 6 weeks ago and said, here's the role we see for you. Can you take some of that weight off again?
Yeah.
And then brought him in for a visit this time physically to see where he's at, and then consummated the deal. So there's questions about how they're going to use him, how they're going to use Taylor. What does this mean for KJ Wright? It may mean the ship has sailed on KJ, because I don't know where you put all these guys. It's a good problem to have, but it's just.
Yeah, I think that definitely, you put a few players on notice. Rasheem Green would be at the top of the list.
Yep, number one. He's got to make the team.
Yeah, you're going to have to fight for the spot, but that's going back to what we talked about that's taken them 8 years to get back to, not just the pass rush, but in general, competition.
Yeah. Everyone's
competing all the time for every spot, which I think it bodes well for us. It's a great model that we built our franchise off of that led to back-to-back Super Bowl appearances and Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
I think the Taylor move, like you said, is going to be more of a Bruce Irvin move. I think some people saw that as, he's now going to replace KJ Wright when they read that story. That's not what's going to happen. Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks are going to be your traditional linebackers that not only are in there for rush downs, but they're also in there for the run downs. So I think that, you might be looking at, some other people on that roster that, they're going to be fighting for some spots. Will Al Woods make the team for sure? We don't know.
Yeah.
Because if you've got Collier moved full-time to the 3-tech, which it sounds like that's the spot they're really, targeting to fill, that 3-tech that John Reed left. When he left a hole, per se. So Al Woods not making this team. Rasheem Green might not be making this team.
Yeah. Alden Smith might not make this team. We haven't seen. Yeah, it's a 1-year deal. We don't know if that includes void years. We don't know I suspect it's going to be a veteran minimum deal that if he doesn't have a good camp, he's not assured of a spot, and it won't hurt him to cut him.
Yeah, I think what they're probably envisioning for Alden Smith is, when he was at his peak those first 4 years with the 49ers, he was in that 260, 265 range.
Yeah.
They actually talked a lot about it when we would play them about, he's an undersized DN, but when you're that athletic and you're that fast, it didn't matter that he was undersized. He was beating the pants off our tackles consistently. We sat front row and saw what Alden Smith can do those first 4 or 5 seasons before he got into real trouble and, got the suspension and took a self-exile after that. So, you're right. Alden Smith might not make the team as well. I wouldn't read too much into the Darrell Taylor position switch because, honestly, he is that type of athlete that, sure, if he is your Sam linebacker on first and second down, doesn't mean he's not going to break down to one of the DN spots on a rush, because that's what the guy does. It's after quarterbacks. Yeah. So, I wouldn't read too much into that. I think you got Cody Barton and Ben Burke-Kirven both in that linebacker crew. That might be one of the players that gets sacrificed in there. If they do move Taylor to the Sam linebacker, maybe that's putting some of those linebackers on notice that, hey, maybe you guys aren't making the squad. Yeah. So it'll be interesting how it plays out in camp, for sure.
Well, and we haven't heard yet this. So we know the NFL is going to a 17-game season this year. The Seahawks get the Pittsburgh game added. You would have to think that it would stand to reason then, and that the players' union would be really driving hard for an expanded roster, at the very least, carrying over the rules they had last year with the pandemic season, in the added flexibility, being able to have veterans on the practice squad and being able to move them up on game day and that kind of thing, to keep people fresh and to try and keep injuries down with a 17-game schedule. So, last year at the end of the year, they usually have 9 defensive linemen. And I highlighted Ford, Monet, Woods, Collier inside. I've got Collier listed with that group. And then Dunlap, Hyder, Robinson, Taylor, Mayowa. So Alden Smith and Rasheem Green have to make the team. If you use one of those guys as the rush Sam, maybe you keep 10, but maybe rosters expand and there's room for all of them. We don't know that yet. And I can't find any information. I even reached out to Corbin Smith today of Seahawk Maven with his connections, and he hasn't heard anything either. It's very odd to me. Maybe there's still some negotiations happening behind the scenes, but maybe they can keep all these guys. We don't know yet.
True. We're going to have to see how the NFL is going to handle this season. There is expanded rosters.
Well, what we do know, and you mentioned it, is they don't need to draft an edge. And they probably don't need to draft a tackle, and with only 3 picks, that's one of the positions this draft is weak at.
Mm-hmm.
So in free agency, they've really done a nice job, and you pointed it out, of eliminating needs in the draft. They don't need a tight end. They don't need a running back. They don't need defensive line. They don't need safety. They don't need linebacker. So you've really narrowed it down to offensive line, corner, maybe wide receiver, right? So we thought we would play with some mock drafts. We do this all the time. And we compare notes all the time.
Too much.
And so I thought, let's use some modern technology. So here's what we're going to do. Let's go. Let's get this guy. Okay, this one. Okay, got the wrong screen up. Get my notes out of there. So this is the Pro Football Network Mock Draft Simulator. We like this one the best because it's really fast. The Draft Network has a great one too, but through the first 2 rounds, it can be awfully laborsome.
Yeah.
So what I thought we would do is this. We'll just run a couple of these simulations and have some fun. The first time through, I want to do staying home. Just 3 picks. Okay. Let's see how the draft falls. We'll take those 3 picks, and we'll look at it that way. And maybe, because this thing's so fast, we could do it 2 different ways. We could, depending on how the first one goes, we could go offensive line early, and then we could come back and see how it looks going corner early. And then we can do one where we accept or propose some trades and pick up some extra picks. So we're going to be the Seahawks, right? We're not going to do a Jets draft here.
Oh, no.
As this is running, the other thing that I really like about what the Seahawks have done in addressing the pass rush, just one other thought, is it seems like, and we felt them doing this last year with the selection of Brooks and Blair the year before, and with some of the scheme changes they made on defense, like they were making the adjustments they thought they had to make to match up with the Rams and 49ers and Cardinals kind of wide open, diverse offenses.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a move, too, to kind of keep up with the arms race in the NFC West because, You have a still young quarterback in Kyler Murray who's extremely mobile in Arizona, can be really dangerous on the run, not as dangerous in the pocket. So you got to pressure the guy, right?
Yep.
Matt Stafford, we know, can sling it as well as anyone when he's stationary. Not a very good mover.
No.
And we know that the 49ers are most likely going to have a rookie as their starting quarterback. So what's the best way to match up with all three of those teams is get after the quarterback, and that's obviously what they're doing. So I like it from that aspect too.
Yeah.
All right, so we're on the clock at 56. We have two trade offers. The New England Patriots are offering pick 96 and a second next year. So they want us to move back 40 picks. They're going to give us a second rounder next year, but they also want our seventh. Yeah, well, we're going to reject all trades in this one anyway. And then the Bears want us to move back like 25 picks and give us 2 picks for next year. Sorry, guys. Sorry. So we're going to reject both of those trades. So here's what we have at 56. If you can see the overall board, the top-rated prospects left on the board, according to Pro Football Network, are offensive linemen. You got Trey Smith, who's a big giant guard out of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And Dylan Radins, who we talked about yesterday, is one of my favorites. Kind of an undersized, 6'5", 300-pound left tackle prospect from North Dakota State. Needs to add some weight, but super athletic, likes to drive guys 10 yards down the field. Then we have a corner, but it's Asante Samuel, more of a slot guy, smaller guy. Yeah. Scroll down a little bit. Landon Dickerson's still on the board, and this is where these mock drafts kind of get a little skewed sometimes. I saw Daniel Jeremiah in his latest mock has Landon Dickerson going in the first round.
Wow, okay.
So we'll see. Coming off an ACL, but clearly the best center prospect in the draft. There's Liam Eichenberg, a potential. Some people think he's more of a guard. I don't. I think he's a tackle, and he's a guy that can play left tackle long term.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this for a minute. We've talked about as much as we want to get a starting center and a starting corner in this draft, right? Next year, we got the drafts. We got the guards taken care of. Damian Lewis, rookie, going into his second year, and then Gabe Jackson through the trade and the extension. But next year, both tackles are free agents. Brandon Shell will be 29 years old, coming off a good year. He might be an extension candidate. Dwayne Brown in his mid-30s now. They have to manage that knee. Could be the end of the road for him. The idea of taking your future left tackle this year if he falls and then redshirting him essentially is intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that, especially Redunds is a guy that, like you said, we talked about yesterday. And this would almost be the perfect situation that he fell to us. And we have the luxury right now of letting him, like you said, redshirt, put a little bit more weight on, obviously get, some more technique stuff cleaned up. He does have a little issue with his hands placement that he needs to clean up at the next level. But he'd be my candidate. I would actually go Mayfield over Eichenberg if we pass on Redunds. Mayfield, to me, just has a little.
I've got the tackles up here. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mayfield for me. Oh, there we go. Mayfield for me, I like a little bit better than Eichenberg because he's got a little bit meaner streak to him, which is something that we've started to get back on our offensive line that we had kind of gotten away from. However, Mayfield's still a very athletic player that he can play in a wide zone blocking scheme. So. Yeah. But I would go Redunds first. I think Redunds' ceiling is much higher than both Eichenberg and Mayfield. So that's probably where I would go.
I mean, when you look at it, when you boil it down to just the tackles, this is where the value is, right? Like, let's look at the centers, and you still have Landon Dickerson, Josh Myers, who we've talked about as maybe not as high a ceiling as some of those other guys, but can step in, start right away as a rookie. Keith Myers compared him a little bit to Max Unger. Then you have Quinn Miners, who's everyone's favorite Seahawks prospect now. I don't think it's going to be available by 56, by the way. And then you have the undersized guys. I've heard a lot of support for Drew Dalman, Drake Jackson. Those are 298-pound guys. We've been there with Joey Hunt, right? So
yeah,
that's why you look at
Dalman, though, from Hunt and from the guys that he's being drafted with this year, is he makes all the calls at the line, which is something we're missing. Postage.
Yeah.
Struggled with making the calls at the line. He certainly struggled with, like we talked earlier, stunts, blitzes. So I think that the one support I would give a guy like Dahlman, even being undersized, though, is very smart football player, very smart guy, and he makes all the calls at the line, and he picks up on those things. So I could see him, because obviously he's way down there. He's the 128th prospect right now.
Yeah, a lot of times he's there in the 4th.
Yeah, so he should be there in the 4th. So, yeah, I would go, let's get the future left tackle. That's where I would go.
Yeah, because even if you go farther down, I mean, there's Spencer Brown's the Northern Iowa kid who's 6'9". He's just a beast. Might be more of a right tackle. Walker Little's intriguing. Hurt his shoulder in the first game, 2019, missed the rest of the season, and then opted out last year. Preseason 2020 was talked about as a first-round pick, a potential franchise left tackle. He's sliding because no one's seen him play in almost 2 years. Brady Christensen, some consider an elite pass protector and a potential franchise left tackle. Jackson Carman was in some late first, early second-round mocks early in the process as just a beast of a right tackle. There's crazy value here, so I'm with you. Yeah. And I'm not knowing specifically what the thought is on whether Radens can add functional strength and bulk to that frame or not. Sometimes guys are maxed out, right? Yeah. Haven't read anything along that line. I know it's small school, but you watch his tape and he's killing guys, and he just has a joy for playing football and really athletic. So I'm with you. Let's go. Dylan Radens is the way that their play-by-play guy from North Dakota State was pronouncing it. Doesn't seem right to me, right? You want to say Reduns.
Yeah. So Radens, got it.
Radens, yeah. We could, maybe that kid's wrong. Who knows? I've worked in North Dakota in broadcasting. They're not all top shelf up there, let me tell you. All right, so now we go 4th round. And now it's tough. Let's just click on centers for a second. So Dowman's gone. Drake Jackson's there, and then a bunch of projects. Trey Hill is interesting as a 3-year starter. He's a big guy. But
he's much more suited for the power ball.
Yeah. Not a great lateral mover.
Yeah.
If you look at the overall, there's some receivers there that are interesting. I like Seth Williams out of Auburn. I think he kind of fits.
I like Stevenson a lot.
Yeah,
I really like Stevenson.
Both those guys kind of match up with what the Rams do. But now we're looking need, right? Let's see what's still there, cornerback wise. So DJ Daniels, an interesting dude. He meets barely. He's barely 6 foot. He's got the 32-inch arms and the right wingspan. He's a guy that played really well in 2019 when I'm trying to remember his teammate, a guy that was drafted higher, his name, and I can't right now off the top of my head. He was out. Daniel took over, played really well.
Yeah.
And then moved back to a rotational role actually in 2020. Wasn't a full-time starter, but has some good tape. Kind of fits the mold, might be a guy that can play outside for the Seahawks. And then some of the guys that I really love are gone. Keith Taylor's gone. He drops to the 4th a lot of times. Although Taylor's a guy, and I know that a lot of people know him here from UW. He was the best corner on the field at the Senior Bowl. He's 6'1", but he doesn't have the arm length of the wingspan. Now, Pete Carroll has said DJ Reed has kind of opened his eyes about some of that stuff. But I don't know that Pete Carroll would want both of his starting corners to not meet those thresholds.
Yeah, I think that'd be tough, especially in our division.
Yeah.
With some of the bigger wide receivers that we have to play twice a year, for us to run 2 guys out there that are under 6 foot, under 32-inch arms. So I don't see that either.
It is interesting, though. The NFC West has kind of gotten away from the big receiver. Obviously, the Cardinals just added A.J. Green. Larry Fitzgerald retires, he hasn't officially retired yet. But
Hopkins is a bigger receiver. He's not a small guy.
Yeah, right. More of a possession guy.
Brandon Ayuk's got some size to him. I think he's 6'3".
One guy that does meet those specs is Benjamin St. Juste. This kid is 6'3". Yeah. He's got about a 12-foot wingspan or something like that.
Yeah.
He's a project. Probably not going to play as a rookie, but definitely. I mean, he looks like he kind of looks like Richard Sherman. He kind of looks like Brandon Browner. Like he's just massive for the cornerback spot.
Yeah.
Cameron Bynum's a guy who was a 4-year starter at California, really, really productive, picked off a lot of balls, made a lot of plays on the football, but doesn't have the great athletic testing.
Yeah.
And then you got like guys like Kerry Vincent, more of a slot guy probably. Rodarius Williams doesn't meet the specs. I'm not blown away by the corner group. What about you?
No, I'm not seeing anything there that's fourth round worthy. If we're sticking to our 3 picks, that's I would pass.
So let's look at wide receiver. Now you're a fan of Marquez Stevenson.
Yeah. So this guy, he is a perfect number 2 outside. It lets Lockett kind of just move around the field, which I think is the best thing for Lockett. Sometimes he plays a slot, sometimes he goes outside. And then you've got 2 real big body deep threats between Metcalf and a guy like Stevenson. That's going to put some stress on the back end of a lot of defenses. The kid, he's a big play type receiver. So I really like him. I think that, he's not necessarily a number 2 right now. I don't think he steps into that role initially. Maybe at some point during the season he could work his way in there.
Yeah.
Is the 2. But he would certainly right off the bat challenge Swain for the number 3, and Penny Hart. Penny Hart's still here. So, he would definitely be battling those guys for, snaps. That's for sure.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned Penny Hart because, I really love Shi Smith, but he's a guy 5'9", 5'10", inside guy, really quick and shifty. Could really be exciting in this Rams offense, but then I look at, they got Penny Hart, and they got John Ursua, who hasn't really gotten a chance yet, might with this new coordinator. Aaron Fuller, undrafted free agent last year at a UW, I think. He's a little bit taller than that, but kind of fits that inside mold. So I do think if they're going to draft a guy, outside makes sense. I think Seth Williams kind of matches that sort of profile too. 6'2", kind of reminds me of Robert Woods sort of in that offense, shifty enough, fast enough. I mean, in the 4th round, you're not going to get guys with elite skills. But what do you think about taking a receiver here over a center who we kind of like, but probably isn't going to be a starter?
Yeah, because, go back to centers. Both the top 2 guys, Drake Jackson and Manet, if that's how you pronounce it, from Penn State. Manet's a power blocking guy, he's a small box center. In other words, he's not very lateral mover.
Yeah.
So he would struggle with us moving to the wide zone blocking scheme. I mean, I guess you could make an argument for either Jackson or Hill at this point, but I would probably go wide receiver. If you've got a value up there with Stevenson or the kid out of Auburn, Seth Williams, you almost have to go with that because I think if you're going with the draft philosophy of draft the best player available, I think right now you're seeing wide receiver position.
Let's take a peek at one other thing, though. I want to take a peek at guard and just see if there's any guys out there, not really, like David Moore out of Grambling State. It was the thought just being if there's a guard that falls to 4 that the Seahawks think is a rookie starter, there's still, and I saw another piece yesterday written about the possibility of moving Damian Lewis full-time to center if the right guard is there. That discussion was based more on choices in the 2nd round than in the 4th.
Yeah.
But if a guy slips through the cracks, I think that's something that we could look at. But let's go receiver. I'm with you. And one thing I will say this. I love everything about the Pro Football Network mock draft simulator. And I read a story last week on how it was basically created not as a lark, but just the guys were bored during the pandemic, the first lockdown last year, and thought, let's throw this together. It probably won't be a big part of our brand, but just what the heck? It's what people want. And now it's become a huge driver of traffic to their site, and it's been really great. But they don't, while they do have scouting reports attached, they don't have height, weight specs. And that drives me crazy because I'm not as familiar as Stevenson with Stevenson as you are. I haven't looked at him as closely as I have some of these other guys, Austin Watkins. But let's go with the receiver here because I think that's where the value is, right?
Yeah.
Then that's going to take us to 250, which is a total crapshoot. So we'll definitely pull up the all prospects board as we get to 250. Now, I will say this. I think there's a good chance to talk about this. Michael Sean Duger of The Athletic wrote a great mock draft the other day where he suggested using this 7th-round pick to trade for a veteran receiver who another team might want to move on from. And he mentioned two in particular. I'm totally spacing on the first one now. But he mentioned the big kid out of Stanford that was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles last year as one possibility.
Oh, Arcega-Whiteside?
Yeah. And then now I can't remember the first kid's name. Maybe if it comes to me later, I'll just blurt it out.
Okay.
But that's an interesting idea. After the late in the draft, 7th round comes around, and other teams have addressed that need and feel like, hey, I might want to get a little more value. I could see moving, or maybe not a receiver, just something else, a corner perhaps. I could see using this 7th round pick to pick up another veteran body that they're a little more sure of, because all the unknowns of the pandemic shortened season and not having a combine and all that stuff, having to rely on 2-year-old tape and pro days, those unknowns are going to be even more amplified in the 7th round.
Yeah.
So I could see using it for that, or just simply trading it for an extra pick next year, kind of doing the reverse of what they've done the last couple of years and taking someone's 6 from next year, and just to get out of the 7 this year. If it's not going to bring you back.
Mustafa Johnson's there. That's who I'm picking. I'm telling you right now, I love that kid.
He's a guy we've seen in the being in the Pac-12, junior college transfer in Colorado.
Yeah.
Smaller guy, right? More of a 3 technique.
Yeah. He is definitely more of a penetrating D tackle because of his speed. I think he's a perfect guy that, you can take in the 7th, and even if he doesn't make the team, has a decent chance of making it to the practice squad.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to compete with everyone else during the undrafted, free agent period, I kind of like using those 7th round picks, especially something, 250, that, let's see if we can't get him into camp, and we've got control up to the point where if you do have to cut him. And I always forget, we got that other D tackle on the roster. You always remember his name. I always forget it.
Lattimore, Cedric Lattimore.
Yeah, Cedric Lattimore. I mean, that's perfect, opportunity for those guys to battle it out for a roster spot.
Yeah.
And to put a little more pressure on Lattimore to either keep his development going, and then maybe Johnson gets cut and then we get him on the practice squad, or maybe Johnson comes in and he's more of what we need. I mean, Poona Ford and Al Woods and Monet, they're all run-stuffing type of D tackles. So to have someone to step in behind Reed at the 3 tech and give us some depth there with, the guy that's much more able to get after the passer, that intrigues me,
Yeah. And then for me, and I posted a mock draft on Twitter I did yesterday, and some of the reaction I got was, no way is this guy going to be there at 250, but he is here again today. I like Tay Gowan of Central Florida. Doesn't quite have 32-inch arms. I think he clocks in at 31.5, 6'1", 190 pounds, small school guy who opted out last year. So again, small school, only played 1 year as a full-time starter, and then opted out. But in that 1 year as a full-time starter, couple picks, 8 pass breakups, really good technique. I could see him being kind of a late round project that the Seahawks like to take on. I could see them going corner here.
I'd go Tay Gowan. Of all the corners that we're looking at, I would go Tay Gowan. Especially because, if you read his negatives, and not just on this one, I've seen on some other write-ups of him, that's all stuff that's coachable, if he accepts the coaching. So, he's got the speed. You can't coach speed. So he's got the speed. He's got the size that we talked about. You can't coach size. You can't make these guys any taller.
Yeah, I think it is. At his pro day, didn't he ran like a sub 4.4, I think.
Yeah, I think it was like a 4.38, 4.37 in that range. So yeah, that's a guy that I would definitely, either him or Johnson. But with our needs, I'd go Gowan. With the needs that we have, Gowan would be my pick.
So let's see how that looks. So if the Seahawks, if everything falls apart, and teams might be less willing to trade up this year because they don't want to sacrifice draft assets with all the unknowns. They might feel like, hey, let's take as many shots as we can, get these kids into camp and see what works, right? It's conceivable they may end up with only 3 picks.
Sure. And we also know about the Seahawks. Like,
yeah,
any game that we talk right now, there's a 99.9% chance they draft someone that we've never even been looking at. So it's more important to look at types of players. Don't get hung up on a specific player itself, but
exactly
types of players that fit that mold.
Yeah.
And I could see the Seahawks, with this draft, if they stayed put and did those 3, it looking like this, an offensive tackle and or center, a wide receiver, and a cornerback. I think those, if you said, hey, you only got 3 picks and they all had to be at a different position group, this would probably be the 3 position groups they would hit, in my opinion.
I'd say, and I like the way this looks because the more I look at this, the more excited I would be if they took a tackle, a guy that can legitimately play left tackle long term. Or at the very least, can play one of the tackles so that you have one of those spots long-term locked down next year. And then if you have to go out, put all your cap space or all your assets or whatever to get a left tackle, then fine.
Yeah.
Because as much as we all think it'd be great to find a day one starting center in this draft, I just feel like the value of this long-term makes more sense. Centers are a little easier to find. If they go to camp with Posick and Fuller and neither of them plays well, they can go out, they can trade for a guy, right? Or they can pick up a camp cut from somewhere. Or they can sign another guy, like Austin Ryder still hasn't been signed. There's always guys that if you're just looking for a serviceable center, you can find. Left tackle's not so much. Not so much. And without a first-round pick next year, I think if you got a guy that you think has a really high ceiling at that position, bring him in for a year, have him learn from Dwayne Brown, I think there's a ton of value in that. Ton of value.
Absolutely.
Let's do one more with no trades. I want to see how it looks if we take a corner first, just to see what some of that value looks like. And also, some of these centers that we looked at late, it's completely conceivable a guy like Drake Jackson goes undrafted. 298 pounds.
Sure.
Right? I mean, guys like that, or like the kid out of Texas A&M, or even the guy out of Penn State you talked about. These aren't highly rated prospects. Sometimes those guys slide, and once they start sliding,
Well, and this year, out of all the years, might be the ultimate slide for a lot of players because of, no tape on them and opted out. And, like when we talked about Little, if they got hurt in 2019 and opted out in 2020, now you're going back to 2018 tape on these guys. So I could see a lot of guys sliding just because teams just aren't that comfortable, picking them because there's not enough available information.
And once the draft is over, as good as the Seahawks already are at identifying and recruiting undrafted free agents, if I'm an agent this year, as good as the Seahawks roster is, I would steer my client, especially if he's an interior offensive lineman. Hey, we don't need ads here. Come on, Verizon. If he's an interior offensive lineman or a corner, and my kid doesn't get drafted, I'm steering him to the Seahawks because I know they only had 3 picks and there's opportunity.
Sure. Absolutely.
So they could really have their pick of some of these guys that slip through. So if you want to go corner in the second round, there's a lot of interesting value here. So no way Elijah Molden makes it to 56, and he's more of a slot guy anyway, so let's not even consider. Oh, Tyson Campbell, that's the name. That's the other kid that DJ Daniel rotated with last year after replacing in 2019. Robert Rochelle is a small school kid who meets all the Seahawks standards, really intriguing guy.
Yeah.
Paulson Adebo is a guy who opted out last year, but again, looks the part of the Seahawk corner at 6'1". Trill Williams is another guy. Corbin Smith loves him, about the same size as Adebo. There's Keith Taylor, who we talked about, doesn't quite meet the specs, but we've seen the production and how good he was at the Senior Bowl against some really good receivers. Is this group good enough to make you take one of those guys over? Well, now we still have that same group. Dickerson, let's forget him. He's not going to be there. Miners, you can get a starting center here.
Yeah.
Or you go back to tackle again. Sam Cosme, he's not going to be there, but you got Mayfield, Brown, Little again. Radens isn't there in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Is that corner group, is one of those guys, is an Adebo or Rochelle enticing enough to take 2 over one of those other guys? And we don't have to do this full mock. I just wanted to look at this scenario and ask that question. Do you think one of these guys warrants missing out on that other group of tackles or interior linemen?
I would, in this situation, I would probably go back to that center group or tackle group with who's available with this pick. Although, that being said, oh, man.
This is what sucks about having 3 picks, right? I mean, it's not like, well, maybe the guy that we don't take will last 30 more picks, and we'll get him in the third.
You know what? I would go quarterback. I'd go Rochelle.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'd go Rochelle here. I think that not a day one starter.
Right.
I think he's, going to have to come in and learn the kick step and learn our system, and so there's going to be a learning curve there for him. But I could see him next year in camp starting to challenge for playing time, certainly being a starter. I'd probably go Rochelle.
He is, for the record, barely 6 foot, 5'11", 7/8. Why don't they just call that 6 foot? 195 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, 79-inch wingspan. Small school kid, really interesting. I like Adebo too, but I think I could see Rochelle enticing the Seahawks more and intriguing them more because of his upside. So I do think the drop-off from here, let's just take him and see what happens. The drop-off from here to the 4th round, you can still then get, I bet we're going to find some maybe not center, but some tackle prospects here in the 4th round that are interesting. So if we go look at center again, in this case, the same guys are there as they were the first time. But if you go tackle, like Jalen Moore, Western Michigan, Tommy Doyle, Miami of Ohio, those are 2 guys that some people think have a chance to be long-term starters at left tackle, at the very least right tackle.
Yeah.
So these are guys that are really interesting to me. I could take a Jalen Moore all day long in the 4th round and still feel pretty good. And let's say you take him, whether you like Doyle or Moore, because then you get down to the 7th round and there's usually still some interesting receivers. Oh, I thought we were going to get Simi Fehoko, who some have
he will not be there.
Some have comped to DK Metcalf for his just freakish athleticism. Trey Walker's a guy I really like as a slot inside guy with great hands, had a huge monster season for San Jose State last year. Des Fitzpatrick is a guy with a lot of experience. Tyler Vaughn's a 4-year starter at USC, really looks like he would fit that Rams kind of crossing route offense. See, lots of value here in the 7th round as receiver. Let's just pick one just for the sake of it and see. Now you've got a really high upside corner. A potential, not potential, I think Jalen Moore's floor is right tackle starter and his ceiling is left tackle starter. So a lot to get that in the 4th round is great. And then a guy who could compete for playing time as a rookie in Trey Walker. This combination looks pretty nice.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
All right, let's do one more, but let's do some trading. Let's have some fun with this. So we'll see what's offered, and then if nothing is, there's a couple of scenarios that match really well on the trade chart that we can do just to see what, picking up an extra 4. Okay, so here, see, this we talked about this before we went live. This seems to happen to me a lot. So the Vikings want us to move down like 20 picks.
See, I do that trade.
But then, giving up 250, now you're going to get 78 and 90.
Yeah. Because I've noticed that 90 to like 110 range.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good players left there.
That's intriguing. What I usually do is make a deal with Tampa Bay where you slide down about 6 spots and you pick up their 4th. But let's do this one because 250 is a crapshoot anyway. So this is giving you a chance to move. Now you still only have 3 picks at this point. We may get an offer for one of these other picks, but it's more in the meaty part of the draft, right?
Absolutely.
Let's take this and see what it looks like. That's a really cool scenario. Okay, now Detroit's offering us a third next year to move all the way down to 101. We can't really do that, right? So the overall board, I like Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, him being there.
There's Tyson Campbell.
Spencer Brown's there.
Some of those tackles, there's still Robert Rochelle. Some of those left tackle guys. We know they talked to Brevin Jordan, but I think they're okay at tight end. So we're going to move on from that. Jackson Carman, again, is a guy who can play right tackle long term if you don't think Brandon Shell is going to be it's interesting, but it's not that much different than what we've looked at.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder, let's zero in. Let's look at corner. You got Campbell. What are Campbell's specs again? Let's look him up. He is 6'1", 193, 32-inch arms. NFL.com has him graded as a guy who will be a starter within his first 2 seasons. And then there's Rochelle, who we really like. And then let's go back to they've got Dalman. I don't know at 78. That's a little rich for me. And then you're definitely into the second tier of tackles. I kind of feel like corner is still the best value.
Yeah, I would go Campbell there.
And then you only drop down 12 picks, and then boom, here you go again. Now in real life, given where the Seahawks are, I would consider a deal like this. You move down 2 spots, pick up an extra pick next year.
Yeah. That I would take.
Yep. The Bills are offering us 161 to move down 3 spots, so let's take that. And these are the kind of trades that happen all the time, right?
No.
Yeah, I don't want to give up any. Oh, look at the Bears. Just keep trying. The Bears just keep trying to offer us their shit.
They just want our people. Oh my God.
They're like, "Are you sure you don't want my couch? How about my bedroom furniture? How about this beanbag chair? Just take it all." Wow. I'll take.
No, that's. I like because since we dropped to 78 and then we moved out to 90, I'd stick at 93 if those are the offers we're getting.
Yeah, that's an interesting offer. Okay, so we went corner, right? I'm trying to keep up here. We can click on this guy here and it'll tell us. Yeah, we went Tyson Campbell, and then we got 93, 129. I like that. I like those deals. It really kind of moves us up into some value in the draft. So now let's just check linemen again. Ooh, the tackles have all been picked clean, although you've got Moore and Doyle there still. Dalman is still there at 93. He could make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Wide receiver, let's see if there's some really intriguing. That's the same, kind of the same. So here's an interesting dude, and maybe with the next pick we can talk about him. But Demetric Felton, to me, is really interesting. He's a running back that was converted to receiver. They played him there in the Senior Bowl. The Seahawks clearly now, we found out in the last week, don't like their third down back situation because they tried really hard and put the full court press on trying to recruit Giovanni Bernard before he signed with Tampa Bay. That doesn't bode well for the guys on the roster who are hoping to be the pass-catching third down back. Yeah. Let's wait. Let's keep that in mind for maybe 129 or wherever that was because he's really interesting. Ben Cleveland, if he's there. See, now we're in a scenario where at 93, a Ben Cleveland might be too good to pass up. And even though they went into the draft.
Scheme guy. I get worried now that if we're switching to the wide zone blocking scheme, Cleveland, he's much more of a power guy. I don't know if he fits anymore,
You've seen him run though, right?
What's that?
You've seen this dude run, right?
Oh, I know. He's athletic. He's athletic.
Yeah.
Who's there running now in the draft, on the draft board?
What's that?
Who's there at running back right now?
Trey Sermon.
Wow.
But And here's another guy late, too, as a third down back, Jamar Jefferson, that would fit. Sermon's more of a first and second down guy. A lot of people who cover Seahawks drafts like Kylan Hill. Let's look at D-line.
Oh, Shelvin's still there. Okay.
Yeah, Tyler Shelvin's really interesting as a guy that, could beat out. He's a big
boy.
Yeah, he's like a block eater, right? Yeah, I saw some tape on him this morning. He was just taking, and his hand usage too is amazing, and taking double teams and whatnot.
Yeah.
I could see Marvin Wilson as a guy that appeals to the Seahawks because maybe not this high, but former 5-star recruit, elite athletic traits, hasn't always had the motor, got moved around. His role got changed almost every year at Florida State with all the coaching changes they had there. I could see them looking at him going, wow, he's dripping with talent. Character-wise, he checks out. We can unlock him. Shelvin, I don't know if he makes sense in light of the fact that they brought back Al Woods and they have Monet and Ford that can play the nose. Here's a spot where I could see the Seahawks going, like looking at linebackers or safeties, and I just haven't studied linebackers or safeties in the draft because I don't feel like it's a big need, but I could see them taking a guy. Chaz Surratt's interesting, the converted quarterback. He's a real, he's a run and cover type linebacker. Kind of a hybrid. I could see him going that way. I could see him taking a safety.
Okay.
And then, this is, again, where you could take the developmental, you could take Jalen Moore. So what are we thinking? I don't know which way to lean. This is a different part of the draft board than I've been in,
Me too.
Adebo's still there? No, you're not going to go two corners.
No.
I love Ellerson Smith as a small school edge. Reminds me a lot of Max Williams from 2 years ago, who I wanted so bad, but he's not going to make the team. I kind of feel like a DT.
Go back to the centers real quick.
Yeah, we could go Dalman here.
Still think it's too high. What about guard?
Guard, we had Cleveland. Deontay Brown at Alabama. Again, he's more of a big people moving kind of dude.
He is.
David Moore's a guy who looked great at the Senior Bowl and got some snaps at center at the Senior Bowl.
Man, what's in the tight end group right now?
Still got Brevin Jordan. Is there room in that tight end room for Disley, Parkinson, Brevin Jordan?
Somebody in that room.
So this is interesting because I see with Shane Waldron coming on board, I could see this kind of being an outside the box thing where I think Cody Parkinson could end up being more of a receiver on that roster than a tight end. And we've even talked about him being used as a big slot, like essentially a 6'7" Cooper Kupp in that offense. We know they've had contact. We know they've talked to him. I could see that being a Seahawk type move, and the value here would be pretty outstanding.
Yeah, I'd go Brevin Jordan because you know what? We typically carry 4 anyways.
And Disley coming to the end of his rookie contract, right?
Yeah, be the 4th guy in the room, and I'd go Brevin Jordan. I like that value.
There you go. If only the NFL gave teams like 8 minutes per pick, then they could go through those kinds of discussions like we just did. All right, now let's see. If Drew Dalman had been here now,
I would have picked him.
I would have been all over that. Wide receiver seems a little
Stevenson here or Felton, either one. But I'd probably go Stevenson because he's more of the traditional number 2 outside receiver than a guy like Felton. Felton's going to be much more.
I feel like that's the fact that they were chasing Bernard, though. Let's look back at this group again. Again, it still might be a little high for Jefferson. Well, he's rated 161, and we have the 161st pick, so maybe we'll luck out there. Let's look at the tackles again. There's Jalen Moore, Tommy Doyle. We could take one of that group again.
Yeah.
At 129.
One of them right there is Moore or Doyle.
You like, yeah. Which guy do you like better? I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. They're both small school guys.
Yeah.
Let's see what.
Like Moore a little bit better.
Let's see who Pro Football Network likes. Lacks quick and fluid footwork off the edge.
Well, let's see if Doyle's footwork, if they mention that.
Okay, they say better suited for guard. That's always kind of that's like the default. Like Doyle's a physical specimen, entered the season with high grades from scouts.
Or two.
Yeah, let's go Tommy Doyle.
Van Lennon.
He's a guy that Van Lannen's a big heavy-footed right tackle, only typical corn-fed Wisconsin dude.
Got it.
Doyle is a guy that Daniel Jeremiah specifically mentioned the other day as someone he thought really high upside that a team could take and really groom. So that's kind of a cool pick.
Wide receiver here at 161.
Yeah, so just to recap, got Tyson Campbell, Brevin Jordan, Tommy Doyle. None of the good centers are there. So receiver, Austin Watkins is interesting. He's kind of a mid-sized guy, again, that could fit in that Rams offense really well. Frank Darby out of Arizona State, I'm surprised, is there. Looked good in the Senior Bowl. We saw him play in the Pac-12, 6'2", but plays bigger, wins a lot of 50-50 balls.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of David Moore a little bit.
Palmer at Tennessee is very interesting, too, because, they really had poor quarterback play
Yeah.
the last couple years.
Yeah. That's not all that encouraging for Cougar fans, by the way, for you to say that. Considering that quarterback transfer.
Yeah, click on Moore's little write-up. Let's see what it says.
Who's that?
Palmer. Click on Palmer's write-up. He intrigues me.
Minimal quickness, no real burst in his game, cannot run to the deep throw, occasionally does a bit of double catching. Okay. Let's look at Austin Watkins. Consistent receiver, displayed progress in his game each year, not a vertical threat, would be a solid fourth wideout in a timing offense. That's the offense that they're bringing on.
Yeah. What about 5 Indiana? I think he's a bigger wide receiver, if I remember. Nice. Yeah, okay.
Well, he's diminutive, according to Pro Football Network, who wants you to just guess at how tall he is.
Yeah.
Quick, creative skill player. I mean, that's still something that is interesting. Jamar Jefferson's still there.
That might be my pick, actually.
And he's surprisingly, like, he kind of fits the Seahawk. Like, he's like 5'9", 215, right?
Yeah. He's a bowling ball.
But really catches the ball well. And I think that's what they're looking for. You want to go Jamar Jefferson here?
Yeah, I'll go Jamar Jefferson.
So with just a couple little trades to kind of move up from 250 and get more into the mid-round part of this draft, which I see as a realistic scenario of what Schneider might try to do. Move off of 56, but up from 250, kind of get more into the meat of this draft. So you've got...
and then we also pick up a 5th next year.
Yeah, got a 5th next year.
Yeah.
Tyson Campbell, guy who can be a starter by year 2. Really exciting. Brevin Jordan, a guy who could really be a weapon. In this offense, this Rams type offense. Tommy Doyle, a guy who could potentially be your starting left tackle long term, and then Jamar Jefferson, maybe your third down back as a rookie. It's pretty solid. That is not bad at all, I think. We didn't get a center in any one of those drafts.
So Dickerson, I know why he would potentially be there in a slide situation. It's the injury history, because it's not just one injury. He had 3 significant injuries.
Yeah.
Minors, it's tough to tell. You see a lot of this pre-draft every year. As quick as a guy rises up the board, he falls right back down the closer it gets to draft day. Myers intrigues me. Of the 3, I think Myers has the best opportunity to be there at 56 from Ohio State, the center. But I don't know if there's a guarantee any three of those guys are at 56. And then, like you said, once you get past those first three, the drop-off is significant enough that you're not picking a guy.
Yeah.
Center at 56. You're not taking Dahlman or Drake or, you're just not, or Bennett. You're just not taking those guys. It's way too high.
Yeah.
So, maybe we have to look at it a little bit differently. Maybe that's what the Seahawks are doing right now is they're looking at guards and they potentially slide over Lewis. Or, and we still don't know this yet, maybe Postage or Fuller because now we're going back to the wide zone blocking scheme. Maybe they're better suited for that. I mean, Posick is a more athletic guy. Now, I've got questions about his mental part of the game, but maybe Fuller. Fuller was a 3-year starter, I believe.
At Baylor, yeah.
At Baylor. So maybe they really have something where they're looking at him, and they think that maybe he would be the guy, and Posick is going to be more of the backup for both guard spots and center. That's a possibility right now. So,
yeah. When you look at the Rams over the last 3-4 years when Shane Waldron was there, they never really invested a lot of money. They gave decent money to Austin Blythe to bring him back on the 1-year deal last year, but he was a undersized kind of center with shorter arms and not a great athlete, and they were able to operate that offense effectively without having an elite center. And they've also significantly upgraded the guy to his left. Because I feel like when a lot of people talk about how Ethan Posick had the great first half, then he got hurt and he came back and he wasn't as good in the second half and he got manhandled in the Rams game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't just that he came back from injury because at that same time was when Mike Iupati was breaking down and trying to play through it, so he was playing hurt a lot. And when he wasn't able to play through it, then Jordan Simmons was sliding in there, who's just not very good, and I don't know why the team keeps bringing him back. Putting Gabe Jackson there on your left side, plus Damian Lewis now with another year under his belt.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ethan Posick with another year of being back at his natural position.
Yeah. Posick's still 26, 27?
Yeah.
It's not like he's old.
Right. Yeah.
He's now entering the window, though, that your development at this point is kind of coming to the end. Like, this might be his last year that we could still see a significant step forward in his play.
Yeah, this would be the year. If he's just what he was last year, then they certainly move on. And maybe Fuller even takes over for him at some point during the season. But if he does take a significant step forward, he could earn himself a 2-3 year deal. So I like this last draft the most because I think we played it the way I hope Schneider and Carroll play it, which is just take the best players and don't reach for need, and also don't reach for. I feel like the Seahawks fall in love with play, and I do this too in my mock drafts.
Yeah,
there's this year more than ever because I just didn't have the time to dive into the whole draft pool the way I did last year and in previous years. So there's certain guys I know and I like, and I try to steer my draft around those guys. I feel like the Seahawks have been guilty of doing that too, where it's like, man, we love Rashad Penny. So even though it doesn't make sense to take him where we're taking him, we're going to take him anyway because that's the guy we love. They fall in love with guys, and they'll even talk about it after the draft. We had to have that one draft. We had to have Joey Hunt in this draft. Remember that? No, you didn't.
No, you certainly did not.
No, you didn't.
By the way, 4 years later, he's gone. So
I don't.
Who you thought he was.
Yeah, I don't ever want to hear that again.
I think that, if they, and what I liked about our last draft too is, it still ended only up being 4 picks and then the extra 5th next year, but the 4 picks got into the meat of the draft.
Yeah.
So I think we ranged from 72nd to 161. That was our range.
78 to 161. Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice little.
So that's really good. I mean, that those 4 picks from 78 to 161.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of quality players at positions that we definitely can bring in some more bodies. So I'm good with it, and maybe if we dove into some more of those guards, maybe there's some guards out there that we're just not looking at that would let, Lewis slide over, because they can come in right away as a day one starter. But like you said, a lot of us, myself included, like, I've done the simulations. I read up on some guys that kind of always fall in that range. But, I mean, talk about the NFL draft's a crapshoot anyways.
Yeah.
But this year it's like a crapshoot with a blindfold on.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be hard on a lot of teams. And I think that there's going to be some players that, if you start talking about steals, everyone loves to talk about, this guy's a third-round steal, stuff like that. I think there might be, in hindsight, a lot more steals than years previous because of the lack of information.
Well, and conversely, I think there might be more busts. I think teams might tend to overdraft players who played at bigger schools and played a full schedule last year over some of the guys with the unknowns, even though they may have more limited ceilings, may not have the upside, and they look back a couple years later and go, geez, we just took Cleveland Farrell again, because we just wanted the safe pick.
Sure.
So it's going to be fascinating. 2 weeks from today is the first round, which I actually took that night off from work because at the time I put that request in, I thought there was still a legitimate chance that Russell Wilson could be traded. But I still think it's going to be a really interesting first round. I think they may set a new record for trades. I think a lot of teams are going to make moves up and down, and it'll be fun to watch. Before I let you go, I want to talk a little bit about baseball. The Mariners are just started. In fact, I want to get out there and watch this doubleheader. They got this new thing where they only play every other day and they play 2 games. It's kind of cool. So 5-4 to start with. Won the series against the White Sox. Good team.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're playing the Orioles now. What are your overall impressions 2 weeks in of this Mariner team?
Kind of thought it's kind of playing out the way we talked about a few weeks ago. It's a young team. There's going to be a lot of frustrating moments. We've had a few of those games already.
Mm-hmm.
I did think the starting pitching was going to be a lot better, especially Marco Gonzalez. He's had a little bit of a start to the season. Obviously Dunn in Sheffield, little rough start to the season. But now Kikuchi, wow. That's huge for us. If this is going to be the pitcher we get, obviously we got a terrible break, and he personally got a terrible break. James Paxton, going down, season-ending surgery. But, we kind of knew what we were. Bullpen's not going to be a strength for us. They've blown 3 games for us that I can remember off the top of my head. Young bats to start off a little cold. There's been some signs of life from Trammell and Crawford lately. Ty France, wow, he's living up to it. I really like that kid. What a great piece we got in that trade. But yeah, like I said at the beginning, if they can hang around 500 for the entire season, to me, that's a huge step forward for the organization. It validates a ton of this rebuild that we've gone through and says we're on the right path and we're moving in the right direction. So if we can avoid that big slump, you go 2-13, 3-15 sort of slumps that teams can fall in that are young and don't know how to right the ship. If we can avoid that, I could see this team, 75 to 85 wins. And if they can get in that range, man, I think that's just going to be great. And also just the valuable playing time of the young kids. We're finding out, hey, is Crawford going to be our everyday shortstop or not? We need to know that at some point, because if we're going to compete, and your shortstop can't get above the Mendoza line,
right.
We need to know that. Obviously, Seager has earned his. We're picking up his option. If we don't pick up his option,
just do it.
Watching baseball.
Just do it today. Just do it today.
Yeah, and Haniger looks like whether we keep him or he becomes trade bait. He's putting together a season right now, so
it's great to see.
Stays healthy.
Yeah, it's fun to see.
And then Evan White's got to start hitting. He just that's it.
You can't continue to hit the ball as hard as he's been hitting it and not have that batting average start to reflect it more.
Yeah. So really interesting there. And I'm keeping my eye on Torrens right now behind the plate.
Yeah.
I know why they play Murphy as much as they do. I think at some point in this season, to find out if Torrens can take over for Murphy, he's going to need to get some more playing time.
Yeah.
And it's not specifically at bats with him right now. It's more about getting him behind the plate, calling the game. making sure that he's holding base runners and all the good stuff that you need your catcher to do. So I'd like to see where he's going to end up. Are they going to start to lean a little bit more his way as the season progresses or not? And then, like you said, at the top of the show, Kelnick and Gilbert. Like, when are they coming, baby? Like, let's get to it at some point here before the end of April. I mean, that to me, if we're still talking about Gilbert and Kelnick and they're not up, and this is May 5th or May 10th, I'm gonna be like, okay, WTF, guys, what's going on? Like, you can't just keep holding them down there because honestly, I know they want Kelnick to work on left-hand pitching, but hey, if he's coming up to the big leagues anyways, work on these guys. Like, he's a hitter. The kid's a hitter. He's a gamer. Bring him up. Let's see what we got there.
Yeah, I think I'll say this about the first 2 weeks. First of all, if you'd have told me that Marco was going to have 2 poor starts, and he and Dunn both pitched the doubleheader today, really key day for both of them. Yeah. He was going to have 2 poor starts. James Paxton was going to be out for the year after 24 pitches, and Kyle Lewis wasn't going to have a single at bat. I'd have taken a 5-4 all day long and run with it. The other thing that I really like is we were so worried a month ago about the effect that this Kevin Mather thing was going to have on the organization. And once again, there were Mariner cynics and there were people that were overreacting, fire them all, throw the baby out with the bathwater, get rid of the whole thing, the whole organization stinks. What I like, and I think this is a credit to Scott Service and Jerry Dipoto, it kind of plays to their strengths as managers and as communicators. I think it's way in the rearview mirror. It hasn't affected the clubhouse. These guys have 3 comeback wins already out of the 5 wins, 2-0 in extra innings. The clubhouse is great, and regardless of what you think about Scott Service as an in-game manager, he's the right guy for this team at this time, and they really seem to have something going there in that clubhouse. And even the Kelnick thing has worked out. The fact that Taylor Trammell, if he was 2 for 30 right now, then you could be clamoring for Jared Kelnick. But as soon as Kyle Lewis comes back this weekend when they return home, and you got Haniger and Wright, Taylor Trammell is playing pretty damn well. It's hard to justify taking him out of the lineup full time. But there will be a day, and I don't think it's very far away. I don't think it's any more than 30 days from now, provided Kelnick's producing in the minors the way that we expect he is. And it's hard to find any kind of box scores or information on what's going on down there. You need to go check out. They're not letting people into these games, are they?
No.
You need to go poke a hole in a fence somewhere or something while you're down there and see what's going on.
I think about getting one of those little construction lifts, just drive up, raise up over the fence. And,
like a selfie stick and just kind of, when he's ready, they're not going to let the 26-man lineup affect that. They can, with Dylan Moore struggling the way he is, you don't necessarily have to play him as many days as you maybe even send him down to work on some stuff himself, and then you can rotate Trammell and Kelnick and Haniger and Lewis into the DH spot. Kind of keep those guys fresh and let Ty France play every day at second base or give Kyle a day off at third once in a while. I don't think that'll be an issue, but it sure makes it easier now. If Trammell was really scuffling, then I think that the cries would be louder. But I think it's really worked in their favor, and now they can just kind of do it on the timetable that they want to. So same thing with Logan Gilbert. I think the fact that Paxton went out kind of maybe started that clock a little bit more. Margavicius can certainly hold down that spot, but when Gilbert's ready, they're not going to go, Margavicius is pitching pretty well, we don't want to take him. They're going to make that move when they feel like it's time to make that move.
Yeah.
So,
and I think with Chris Flexen, his next couple starts, they're going to be key for him too.
Mm-hmm.
He had a good one, he had a bad one. But certainly in that first start, wow, I was impressed. I was impressed with his first start. I didn't get a chance to watch the second start, so all I got to see was a box score. But, I think he had 6 walks, 5 earned runs, so a little bit rougher, obviously.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to go watch some of that.
Cool.
Thanks for hopping on, and we'll get together again the week after the draft for sure and break it all down.
Yeah, man, appreciate having you on.
Absolutely, man. Go get some sun, and Say hi to the family, and we'll see you soon.
You too. Thanks, brother.
Erik Briggs, once again, joining us here on the Emerald City Sportscast. So some cool stuff. Continue to follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, because I'll probably do about 1,000 more of these mock drafts between now and 2 weeks from tonight when the draft gets underway. 2 weeks and 1 day for the Seahawks. But kind of be prepared for this, that there will be a little bit of moving around the board, but this is going to be a draft unlike any other that we've watched as fans or covered as journalists. There's not going to be 9 picks, 10 picks, 11 picks, and so there isn't going to be as much margin for error. You know, this draft is going to be judged on how many long-term starters come out of it. And if you end up taking 4 guys and 3 of those 4 play key roles, this can be a more successful draft than some of the 9, 10, 11 player drafts that they've had for sure. Again, Seahawks Forever on Twitter. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, please hit subscribe so you get notifications of live shows in the future. Next week, Corbin Smith of Seahawk Maven is going to be joining me 1 week before the draft, talk about some of his favorite prospects and maybe the approach he thinks John Schneider is going to take into this draft. So again, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next week. Let's see what kind of music we want to play here. Let's do this one. I'm Dan Viennes. This is the Emerald City Sportscast. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.